Hi, this is Kee Lock. You can ask me anything. With so much macro uncertainty right now, how is Vertex making sure its portfolio stays resilient? And where do you still see opportunities to create value for stakeholders? Indeed, with many uncertainties, investors are more cautious, harder to raise money. Therefore, emphasis should be on capital efficiency versus grow at all costs. We will encourage our portfolio companies to focus on execution, focus on scalability, and reaching profitability in a faster possible way. For those portfolios that Vertex invested in, we do whatever we can to value add, to support them in the collaboration and hiring and so on and so forth. Within Vertex as a group, we will triage our portfolio and focus on those companies that demonstrate product market fit and has shown that the products are able to scale to reserve sufficient capital to support their growth in the future. I'm curious to know, how does the firm generate consistent performance for investors? As an investment firm, it is about making informed investments to generate returns for investors. Therefore, it's important to have a disciplined investment strategy in all stages and sectors. This requires robust due diligence and also internal deliberations. This is not about momentum business. This is always important to remind ourselves not to, the pitfall of FOMO and not to be attracted by the overhyped fads. A truism of our business is that it's critical to invest well and equally important to avoid backing the wrong idea. Ultimately, our business is about generating returns from the investment that we made. As a founder thinking about how to balance international growth across markets with very different dynamics, I'm curious how Vertex approaches portfolio allocation across regions. How do you calibrate global strategy while respecting local context? Local market is always important. It's usually the testing ground for you, where you fine-tune and demonstrate your product market fit. Just take Grab as an example. Grab initially focused on Malaysia market. Very quickly, they're able to show that it is relevant in this sector. I'm sure all of us remember the days where we used to hail a taxi on the road, and Grab was able to demonstrate that a lot of users are willing to use mobile apps to book a taxi ride. With that, they gradually, slowly expand to Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and Vietnam, and so on and so forth. And then gradually recruiting the right people in selected market, respecting the culture, finding the right member, and then be aware of the team dynamics in the different markets. And most importantly, the regulations in each market had to be well taken care of. As to the spending into the other market, it all depends on the capital availability, and you need to time it accordingly and phase it out over time. I'm curious, what is your checklist when qualifying a startup worth advocating investment for? Well, it boils down to product, market, and people, defensible value proposition, solving a pain point, and having a strong moat. Large addressable market, strong resilient team, and team members. I'll take Nium as an example. Nium, when we invested in Series A, the initial idea was to address a pain point whereby cross-border payment or cross-border remittance was a large market of a few billion to $1 trillion market size. And at that point in time, cross-border payment is difficult to make, and they are able to find the right solution. And in Series A, after our raising the money, they were able to demonstrate a product that is able to go beyond just a few markets and selectively expanded. And today, there are over 60 markets in the world that they have presence and have other markets, total of 100 markets in total, whereby through other partnership, they're able to provide cross-border payment or cross-border remittance for consumer or for businesses. What are the key foundational areas that a startup must demonstrate to secure funding from the VC? Please share if there are different points for different industry, for example, biotech, deep tech, and etc. Well, across the board, it's all about strong team, strong, clear value proposition, demonstrating a moat, and a large addressable market. You may need to emphasize certain selected area depending on the sector you are, like what some of the area sector they identify. Deep tech, especially important to do enough work on the intellectual property, be convinced that they have a strong intellectual property and a strong technical talent. In the biotech sector, of course, you need to have a scientific validations and a clear path towards regulatory approval. And this is something that's important for any venture capitalist looking at the sectors. And beyond, of course, early stage and A and B, it is important for the venture capitalists in investing beyond that sector stages to be convinced that this business is scalable, this business can reach some profitability eventually. Across different stages of growth, what are the top 3 things you look for in a company to consider that is investable? Can you give an example of such company? Well, as mentioned in the earlier answer, it is all about product, market, and people for the early stage, and for the later stage, it's about proving that its business is scalable and the product market fit, and eventually can reach profitability beyond a certain point. Just take Patsnap as an example. Patsnap, we invested in Series A. Initial idea then was called machine learning, building a software tools, which today are of course all known as artificial intelligence, able to learn and study gather all the data information from patent information around the world and provide this software solution services to the potential consumer on the subscriber and on a subscribing basis to use this database and information to better identify the R&D opportunities. And the team was able to subsequently in the B and C and D round expand in terms of product line and also expand in terms of market to China and then North America and other markets to demonstrate the products. It has a lot more demand and consumer over time. And most importantly, in as a software as a service company, they need to demonstrate what is known as a rule of thumb or rule of 40. Essentially, your revenue growth and the EBITDA growth add together must be more than 40%. And Patsnap was over time was able to demonstrate that they meet the rule of 40 principle. Kindly advise on how VC views startup having to rely on changing customer operational mindsets, having a medium to long-term view on profitability. Lighthouse ideas generally are difficult, as the required ability to evangelize and for consumer to see the value in embracing the vision. For example, Tesla and BYD, an electrical vehicle, essentially require the change in consumer behavior. Consumer used to be able to drive his car to the nearest gas station and pump up the petrol, and voila, you can just drive the car away. Today, as an electric vehicle, you need to find the charging point in only selected locations, sometimes even from your home, and before you drive out your car. So the behavior has completely changed. Consumer must be willing to embrace this change in behavior. And then another nearer to home, take Grab as an example. Grab is another example of the change of consumer behavior. 10 years ago, we used to call a cab by standing on the street, reaching out our hand to hail, stop a cab, and then ride on the cab. Today, all of us are using a mobile app to hail a cab, ride sharing, and this requires the consumer embracing this vision and embracing this app. At the same time, regulator willing to change the regulations to allow this application to come true. Having said that, I want to add sometimes it is difficult to evangelize a certain lighthouse idea. For example, one of the biotech company we supported called Shenzhen Chip Screen biotech company based out of Shenzhen. They are essentially a company which developed a tool to help drug company better uncover and discover drugs before you reach a clinical trial stage. Biotech companies spend about $200 billion a year in R&D, and quite often than not, a product that they discover in the initial stage, when you go into clinical trial stage, it eventually become a failure. So Dr. Lu and his team thought that maybe by providing a better tool, you can better able to address coming to a product success much quicker. They were able to demonstrate this quite quickly, having some customer However, after 6 or 7 years, they were not able to scale the business beyond a couple of $1 million. And quickly he discovered that maybe a better business model for the two is to pivot it to discover their own product, which they did eventually. The first product was a lymphatic cancer treatment drugs, which he subsequently got an approval 6-7 years later, and it became wildly successful. And the company went IPO subsequently, I think about 4 or 5 years ago. Today they are still listed in China about 3 or 4 billion US in market cap.